Welcome back, everyone. Next up, we have Avalon Advanced Materials Inc., trades on the OTCQ under the symbol AVLNF, and on the TSX under the symbol AVL, and specializes in sustainably produced materials for clean technology through 4 advanced stage projects, providing investors with exposure to lithium, tin, and indium, as well as rare earth elements, tantalum, cesium, and zirconium. Please welcome its President and CEO, Donald Bubar. Welcome. Thank you for joining us today.
My pleasure. My first time at the Emerging Growth Conference. I'm excited because we're an emerging growth company now that want to get that message out to a broader audience.
Wonderful. The floor is yours.
Okay. Well, most people, as you point out, know we're a diversified player in this new world of critical minerals, but don't necessarily know that we have an advanced lithium project because we first started working on it 25 years ago. But its time has finally come. So I wanted to share a little bit of history with this audience on the company and how we have evolved over those 25 years. You see a picture of the original discovery outcrop as it looked in 1998 when we first started to work on it. Your reminder not to rely on the many forward-looking statements that I'll be making here today. Briefly on the company, Toronto-based, been operating in Canada since 1995. And right now our market cap is about 65 million Canadian dollars. And basically, I think we're very undervalued now and a good opportunity for investors looking for new lithium equities to invest in, because we're very undervalued compared to most of the other ones that have been putting out lots and lots of news flow and what their plans are. Whereas because we did all the work on our resource 25 years ago, we haven't had the frequent news flow. And most people still know us primarily as a rare earths equity because of our history in that space too. But I'll share a little bit more on that, and just want to remind everyone too that one of the other areas where we've been a leader is in embracing the principles of sustainability as part of our business model. We've been producing an annual GRI compliant sustainability report for 10 years now, and recently received risk rating from Morningstar Sustainalytics. That was very good too. So we believe that with our business oriented towards these materials for clean technology and doing it in sustainable ways, we'll start to attract more interest from the growing ESG investment community going forward. Oh, sorry about that. So I wanted to share a little bit on our history for those of you not familiar with the company. I'm a geologist that's been in the mineral exploration development business for over 45 years now. I got Avalon going in 1995 when it was basically a dormant shell company with a listing on the Vancouver Stock Exchange called Avalon Ventures. And wanting to do something entrepreneurial, and having had some success in my career prior to that with a major VMS base metal discovery, and started looking at acquiring gold and base metal properties. But then those of you that followed the market in those days will remember 1997 was when the Bre-X scandal happened and caused a collapse in the gold price and market interest, and made it very difficult to start a growing company in the sector. But that's when the opportunity with the lithium pegmatite at Separation Rapids was first emerged for us, and wanting to do something different. We had an opportunity to acquire it and started work on it in 1997 and discovered this very significant resource enriched in the rare mineral petalite that's used in glass ceramics. And there was demand for it then. Unfortunately, that demand evaporated in 1999 and we weren't quite able to get there, but we knew that lithium would have another day, and it's arrived. But after that, we refocused on tantalum because there was a price spike in tantalum, and these types of pegmatites always contain tantalum too. And actually acquired another tantalum prospect called Lilypad that we still have too, that also has lithium and cesium. And focused on that for a couple of years. We did have joint venture interest because of the the soaring demand and price. But then that dropped in 2003, and we lost that interest, and once again had to basically put it aside, but knew it would have another day someday. Then we shifted our focus to Nova Scotia, where I grew up, and had an opportunity to work on a project in northern Nova Scotia with potential for IOCG deposits, and also was able to acquire the mineral rights for the old East Kempville tin mine, just back at that time, and knew there was a potential there, but didn't get access for quite a while. But I'll tell you more about that later. But in 2005 was when we acquired our Thor Lake project that became Nechalacho. For nobody wanted it. We were able to get it for $300,000 in stock. Began working on it then in 2006, and we started to see how much rare earth potential was there. And that's when all the interest in rare earths started to grow globally, as there was more and more demand and risk of supply shortages because of China controlling the supply. So we were able to raise money to drill off the basal zone that had this heavy rare earth enrichment. And then in, well, flipping the wrong way here, sorry. Then by 2010, it became our main focus. And that's when we became known as primarily as a rare earths company. And we got that project well financed and took it all the way through feasibility, had a business plan, including a separation plant that we were going to get going in the States, had the investor interest, but then China relaxed the export quotas, prices dropped, couldn't quite get the ball over the line again. To this day, I think they saw us coming as a threat to their control. But we hung on to that too, knowing it would have another day. And then we decided to put it on hold for a while and reactivated our Separation Rapids project, realizing that there was starting to be this opportunity to serve the battery materials market. And we were finally able to get access to the East Kempville site when BHP showed some interest in our model, which I'll get into later. And then things changed again, but we kept going on the lithium project and handed off the Nechalacho project to an Australian company to carry the ball for us to see if they could get the production started at a small scale from the near surface resources, and maybe we'll be able to come in behind them going forward. But things started changing in a big way in 2019 with the new interest in critical minerals generally. And I thought I'd share with you a stock chart from the 15-year period from 2004 to 2019 to show you an example of how we were so well known as a rare earths equity because of the performance going from a penny stock to over $9 Canadian there in 2011. So our timing was really good for taking advantage of all that interest in rare earths. And we had changed our name to Avalon Rare Metals from Avalon Ventures in 2009. And in 2010, we listed on New York Stock Exchange and the Amex in late December. And that was just before the China imposed the export quotas that caused the prices to spike. And that our timing for getting into the rare earth space was perfect. And that's what caused that big spike then. And there was continuing interest for the next couple of years, but until they relaxed the export quotas. And unfortunately, it really dropped after that with the lack of news from there. And we were forced to delist off the New York Exchange in 2015. And here's a more recent stock chart. And obviously, we're still down in the penny stock range, but the spikes in 2019 and 2021 were both related to rare earths. So in further evidence that we're still mainly known as a rare earths equity and not so much as a diversified company and a lithium player, partly because we don't have the word lithium in the name of the company too. But this recent spike up we've had since the last couple of weeks is the first time our stock has actually moved based on lithium news since 1998. So a whole new world of opportunity here. In 2019, as I said, was a pretty significant year in terms of how government finally started to recognize how we've got to start to create these new critical mineral supply chains that are needed in new technology required to reduce our reliance on fossil fuels. And this event, the World Bank put on the Climate Smart Mining Facility I attended in Washington in 2019, was very good for raising awareness in the investment community and government on how we have to start to create these supply chains here and not rely on China, because they're mostly at that time totally controlled by China. So it's took some time, but since then, government here and in the US has been starting to create the policies needed to get these supply chains started. And it's taken some time for the regulators to understand how different this business is from traditional mining, but we got to actually get more of the downstream demand. That's been the key. And what China did right all along was create the downstream processing capacity for the manufactured products to create more of the internal demand, and that gave them that control. So now I think people are starting to realize that's what we have to do here too. But there's still some challenges ahead in that these critical minerals are still not recognized for just how different a business it is to develop compared to traditional bulk exchange traded commodities. And I like to refer to it as an advanced manufacturing business because it's all about defining the market, designing an appropriate extraction process to make that product to serve the needs in the marketplace. So the production rate's defined by the market, not tons and grade, which was always the case with traditional bulk commodities. And the other big difference is you got to start creating the samples through bulk sampling early on to show your customers how the product will meet their needs. So these are all principles that the regulations don't facilitate very easily, but hopefully we're making some progress towards changing that. And this is why mine waste offers such an interesting opportunity. And mining's already done. Just use the waste to recover these critical minerals. Well, then, as many of you now are aware, because we circulated this news a couple weeks ago on how Ontario is now very supportive of getting these critical mineral supply chains started here. They just announced this first ever critical mineral strategy to support made in Ontario electric vehicle supply chains, and that has helped attract some of the downstream manufacturing capacity to come to Ontario with recent announcements from Stellantis and LG, and sounds like there's more to come. So now we've got the local demand, and they've basically been promising that they'll support getting the supplies of the critical materials generated full supply chain in Ontario. So that's opened the door wide open for us to take advantage to get our project going forward here and continue to take advantage of some of the other things we're talking about now, including improving the regulatory framework that has had those issues I talked about before, and create more economic development opportunities for First Nations in the northern part of the province. That's something I've been promoting for many years too, and lithium is a good one because it can be produced in very sustainable ways. So here's where we're located, just north of Kenora in northwestern Ontario, with pretty good transportation infrastructure, just north of both the major rail lines, CN and CP, and close to two major hydroelectric power dams. So that means this site can probably access hydroelectricity and be very kind of low carbon friendly in terms of the energy requirements there in the future. And you can see it's located on the Ontario side of the border, but not far from the Tanco mine, just in Manitoba there, which was the original producer of tantalum, cesium, lithium in North America. And basically, we're in the same belt of rocks that extends across into Ontario, and there's probably more to be found there. But as I mentioned earlier, the minerals we have there are different than they had at at Tanco. We've got a rare example of an LCT pegmatite enriched in the very rare lithium mineral pedalite, as well as lepidolite, but also contains other minerals similar to Tanco, tantalum minerals, and cesium is potentially recoverable here too. So there's lots of opportunity here. And when we originally found it, as I mentioned, it was pedalite for glass ceramics, where we thought we were going to be able to get it started. And that's still an opportunity, as I'll get into here shortly. I also wanted to show property map here, because we have actually expanded our land holdings in the area since the original discovery, which was on the area shown in the red color there, which is now held under a mining lease. But we've added claims to the northwest along this belt of rocks that host these pegmatites. And there's actually very good potential for some additional discoveries in that area, including one we just found a couple years ago called Snowbank that has very coarse grain pedalite and good size potential. So we're optimistic we'll be able to add additional resources and maybe have one resource serve the glass ceramics market and the main one serve the battery market. We'll see. And we own this land position 100%, no underlying royalties. There's one gap in the middle you see in the lighter color there that's held by a private company that has one pegmatite on it too, but they've already expressed interest in working with us if we get our operation started. So lots more potential in the area there. And as I've been talking about for a while, the whole idea is to get the midstream processing capacity going so that you've got a facility that can turn the lithium mineral concentrates into the battery material product. And our vision has been to establish a regional facility in a central location that could not only process our concentrates, but from other new aspiring producers in Northwestern Ontario, because there are lots more lithium pegmatites in Northwestern Ontario. And demand is likely to grow going forward too, so for the products. So we need to inspire more new producers to start to take advantage of the large number in this area. And Thunder Bay was an ideal location because it's centrally located with excellent transportation infrastructure on the Great Lakes, easy access to markets in northeastern US and internationally, and has good infrastructure there on the waterfront and lots of available industrial lands well suited for putting the kind of refining capacity on that we're talking about doing. And it's also a community now that could use the additional new industrial development, having traditionally relied mostly on the forest products industry, which has been in decline. And there's a university there, Lakehead University, that are now been inspired to start to look at increasing their program education capacity on research into critical minerals and materials engineering research relevant to this industry. So that's our vision. And some economics for you. We did PEA on our lithium hydroxide production model back in 2016. And it was pretty good numbers then, actually. This was not based on that model of having the regional refiner. It was basically having a smaller plant on the site as part of the mining operation. But you can see the numbers are pretty good. And the price assumption back then is less than half of what it is now. So plenty of potential value here for this resource by itself, let alone the other resources that we can bring along behind it. And one of the things we've been trying to do is innovate more efficient ways to recover the lithium battery material product, lithium hydroxide in this case. And we have good work by our metallurgist, Dave Marsh, on a way to recover it that also doesn't create much waste. We recover the lithium hydroxide using an electrolysis process, and then we can recycle the sulfuric acid. The only waste is a very pure aluminosilicate material that could actually be a potential saleable product. So very efficient process from environmental impact standpoint. But as I said earlier, it's not just the battery material. That glass ceramic market one, you don't hear a whole lot about it, but it's been growing too. There's a lot of innovation and new high strength glass products where lithium is always the critical ingredient to impart that high strength property. And most of the manufacturers still prefer to use pedalite because it's a very high purity way to introduce the lithium into the batch, and the other constituents of the mineral, the aluminum and silica, are also components of the glass technology. So there's been quite a bit of innovation on new forms, and we're getting a lot of interest internationally for the pedalite for new forms of high strength flexible glass and other types of high strength glass, Corning's Gorilla Glass, et cetera, et cetera. So this is a pretty interesting opportunity now too, and could be an important component of electric vehicles as they seek to lightweight them to use that high strength lithium-based glass in windshields and the dashboard of the car. So we'll continue to try to serve that market as well as the battery market going forward. And we've also been looking at how we can process the rock to make those pedalite concentrates efficiently too, and now have a process that involves just using sensor-based ore sorting and dense media separation, no chemical reagents, very little use of water, and produce a very good quality pedalite concentrate. And some of the end users actually prefer it to be made that way because if you use a flotation process, it will leave residues on the pedalite grains that can impact their quality. So this is basically all set to go too, and we're now in the process of trying to acquire a modest scale one, demonstration scale, to start producing some samples for the end users in Asia and Europe that have expressed interest, and get that going in the relatively near term. So the next steps here, basically, we've got to finish off the process optimization work. We did take a bulk sample last year, 5,000 tons, didn't find a place to get it processed. So that's why we're going to get that DMS plan ourselves, install on the aggregate permit so we can start to process that now to make the samples for end users and material that we can do for the final test work on our flow sheet for producing the lithium hydroxide. So we've got about a $10 million program planned for this year to begin all that work, start to get the site ready, finish off some of the work at the site to complete the final feasibility level study and also complete the feasibility study for the Thunder Bay refinery and all the other requirements on environmental assessments and permitting to help get the whole project going in the next year or two. So we're hopeful that we'll be able to actually start producing some trial quantities of the pedalite and start that market in 2023. And then while we're doing that, get the refinery in Thunder Bay constructed and hopefully be able to start producing lithium battery materials as soon as 2025, and hopefully bring along inspire other producers come behind us so we can grow that production over time. Thought I'd also briefly mention before I finish here about a couple other projects. I mentioned briefly earlier Lily Pad, the one we worked on 20 years ago as a tantalum prospect, but hung on to it knowing it would have another day. Well, here we are, because it also has very high cesium enrichment. It's just in a fairly remote location with not very good access right now, but that may change if they start to develop the Ring of Fire, which you see just to the north of us there. We're quite close to a community called Fort Hope, home of the Iabamatong First Nation, that I think we can work with going forward. Their former chief, Harvey Esno, is now on our board of directors, and we can show how this can be developed in very sustainable ways with very minimal environmental impacts. But what's really got us excited about it is the cesium content, because it's exceptional. There's very high cesium content there. Lots of potential for a significant resource, and cesium now is in very short supply. there's none left basically at the Tanco mine. That was the biggest producer in the past, and just a few other occurrences out there that are creating some modest amounts of supply. And because it's so scarce now, the prices have gone up tremendously. And now cesium products are selling for some $5,000 a kilo, and lots of potential for new applications. Already lots, because it's the most electropositive element on the periodic table, lots of potential there. And we want to be able to take advantage of this going forward here too. And we've done some work on it in the past. When we were exploring it for tantalum, drilled a dike that actually we found more cesium in it than tantalum. Called it the pollucite dike. It's very unique geologically in that the cesium mineral pollucite occurs as a rock-forming mineral throughout the whole dike, whereas on every other occurrence that's been documented, they're basically in small pods. So this has huge potential going forward. And lastly, East Kempville is also of interest now. Got lots of interest now in the whole principle of extracting value from historic mine waste. And in addition to the tin, there's other elements in there, indium, gallium, germanium, and it's another place that we could potentially recover lithium from. There's 25 million tons of waste there that now represent an interesting opportunity. And not only that, but tin prices have really taken off too. It's in short supply, trading over $40,000 a ton now on the LME, and needed in a lot of new technologies.
Donald, I'm sorry, I'm going to have to cut you off. I mean, this is fascinating stuff you're talking about, but we've got to move on to our next presenter. So, can you join us again in the future?
Sure. Yeah. Sorry, I
know
lost track of the time there with that late start, but
well, there's so much.
Pretty well covered everything.
Well, there's so much to talk about, and our audience has tons of questions. We'll send directly to you so you can answer them. But please join us again because the Q&A is a really thrilling part of this this conference. So thank you so much for your time with us today.
I would be delighted to join you again. There's Wonderful. Our contact information.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. Everyone stay with us as we transition to our next presenter. We'll be right back.